you optimistic on the other side of this? Because it might be helpful if people know that no war goes forever, even though it may sound forever. No pandemic, as we said, goes on forever. No night is forever. There's always the daytime, right? And it always follows it, thank God. So tell us a little bit about what you see happening, and then what's the other side look like?
You cannot know in advance, okay, such is the chaotic nature. There are certain patterns you can tell. You can tell the timing of this whole thing, when it will get worse, when it will resolve, and so on. But internal versus external,
you don't know that.
You can't predict, because it could flip one way or the other, interestingly, as we saw in the 30s to the 40s. I mean, who would have predicted that? Who would have predicted that after the second New Deal and after FDR would go Madison Square Garden jammed with 10,000 people, and he would get up there and he says, I know that the capitalists and the robber barons, they hate me, and all these Republicans, they hate me. And he said, I glory in their hatred, and 10,000 people screaming. That was the partisanship in 1936. And by the way, when Roosevelt won, Republicans were almost completely wiped out in Congress. I mean, there were only like 14 Republican senators left in the Senate. I mean, so in other words, we're talking about what happened back then.
Yes.
We could be seeing that again. And would you have predicted that at the end of that, we wouldn't be in a civil war, but we'd end up completely unified? And that's how fast collective identities can change as you get toward the end of a fourth turning. It's a very dynamic period, right? So, timing. We are right now, look, both political parties are leaderless, right? I mean, we've got a Republican Party that doesn't know where the hell it is right now. And, we got Trump, he's sort of out there, and we got DeSantis, we got Cotton, and we got all these people. We don't know. The Democratic Party, leaderless. I think it's fairly certain now from everyone I talked to in Washington, D.C., Biden is not going to run for a second term. And you've got, no one is even thinking about the vice president. So essentially, you have a Democratic Party that's leaderless, a Republican Party that's now essentially leaderless. It's open. And one question you asked me, actually, before we went on, the identity of a leader. The identity. Yes. Where do leaders come from?
Yes.
One thing I've learned from fourth turnings, to answer that ancient question, are leaders born or are they made? One thing about fourth turnings is they are made. They are made. Leaders are not born. Teddy Roosevelt, who was Franklin Roosevelt's, fifth cousin, uncle kind of thing, he was a man of vastly more capacity, intelligence, energy than Franklin Roosevelt. I mean, he was a dynamo. Everyone thought that Theodore Roosevelt was like a phenomenon, a god on earth. The guy would read, 2 books a day. He would be out, chasing rhinoceroses with his gun. I mean, he was just an amazing phenomenon. He did galvanize the country, but he was unable to put through any kind of major changes. It wasn't the right season, right?
Right.
Franklin Roosevelt, no one thought much of him. I mean, he was not a great intellect, actually. He did have an amazing capacity to make friends and empathize. And I think polio was part of that. Mm-hmm. That was a personal crisis which really transformed him in a very beneficial way. He was made. Abraham Lincoln, I mean, a nobody, a one-term congressman, just suddenly was the right man at the right time. Same thing you could say about, George Washington in a way. But that's my point.
Is it during the crisis? Is it the gray prophet that becomes the leader, or it could be executed by the or the nomads?
So
then the millennials do the fighting.
So the great champion is the sort of the elder prophet.
Yes.
Now, whether that great champion is also the supreme national leader, that can vary. It was true with Franklin Roosevelt. He was a prophet archetype. He was the elder leader, and the GI generation absolutely worshipped Franklin Roosevelt. And the same thing was true with Abraham Lincoln. And when Franklin Roosevelt died, the nation mourned for him exactly as they mourned for Abraham Lincoln when he died. I mean, that was the generation that all young people followed. And certainly all the Union followers, all the Republicans in the North, would follow Lincoln,
Yes.
anywhere. So great leaders, made, not born, that took us through this harrowing period. Now, they were great champions. They were both prophet archetypes. In the American Revolution, we did have prophet archetypes, people like Sam Adams or Benjamin Franklin, but the one that everyone worshipped was George Washington.
He was a
who was a
nomad.
nomad.
Yes.
Exactly. Another one would be Queen Elizabeth, and actually we write about all these crises going back, but another one was Queen Elizabeth, who was a nomad. I mean, Queen Elizabeth had a little copy of, Machiavelli's The Prince, right under. I mean, she was always reading, like, how to stab them in the back when they were licking and stuff. And she was a total pragmatist when it came to religion, right? She just wanted a practical way to get rid of this issue. So, but she was a nomad, right? So, typically it's someone who's an early-born nomad, or if they're a prophet, they're a late-born prophet. Someone on the cusp of the two.
I want to finish with a compelling future of the springtime, because it's not a year or two. Once we make it through this, then we have 20 or more years usually of a more optimistic time. Describe what the springtime is to come.
The springtime, look, everyone is going to regard the springtime as a wonderful time, given what came before. And there would be no doubt about when it starts, because suddenly the great conflict will be over. It's when all the treaties are signed, all the resolutions are made, and suddenly it's a time when, after history moves very fast, it suddenly really begins to slow down. And when suddenly institutions can be remade very quickly, and new laws and so on, all this great stuff put into place, suddenly things become harder to change. Right? Now, socially, it's what millennials have been dreaming about. It's what GIs were dreaming about. It's what it's where we will have calm.
People unified.
Everyone will have a place. Everyone will be unified. And we will all feel great about our country.
Sounds impossible right now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what crisis does, because people get exhausted with the emotion. These seasons, think of it as emotional seasons. And, the optimism season, you go, go, go. But if you smile all the time, your face hurts eventually, right? After 20 years. And so people go through that summertime of that internal fight and looking for the individualism. I don't want to be part of the group. And then all of a sudden the unraveling happens, and everybody supposedly has the rewards, at least financial rewards. And then after that big fall of rewards, what do you have? The next winter time again. And now people come together to fight the crisis. And so this is the cycle of